Hail Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. If you're new to the channel, welcome! We talk about all manner of dorkly things here, so whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes, we probably have a playlist about it. Feel free to check us out. Today is another in our Dork Lord of the Rings segments. And today's topic involves the Silmarils. Specifically, the origin, the fate, and the legacy of the Silmarils. Showing how they impact the events of the Lord of the Rings. In fact, as I was researching this topic, I actually came upon a connection that I hadn't considered before. Kind of blew my mind. I'll say it at the end. I'm going to set the table and then give you this revelatory connection. And hopefully when I give it, you won't be out there going, yeah, of course, Matt, what the hell? But it was revelatory to me. Let's put it that way. So, here we go. The Silmarils. Obviously, the Silmarils, arguably the most important items in Tolkien's mythology. Yes, there's the ring, but I would argue the Silmarils may actually be more important to the overall story of Tolkien's mythology. Obviously, to the events of Lord of the Rings, the ring would be important, but the Silmarils definitely have a huge place of prominence in Tolkien's lore. So, what is their origin? Well, they are made originally by Feanor, the famed elven smith. So I'm going to read you a passage that describes the making of the Silmarils. And note how Feanor creates a brand new substance that he names Flubber. No, he names it Silima, hence Silmarils, hence Silmarillion. So all things emanate from this moment of creation. And there's a lot in here. There's some prophecy, and a lot of what I'm about to say here sets the table for what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the video. So here we go, the creation of the Silmarils. In that time were made those things that afterwards were most renowned of all the works of the elves. For Feanor, being come to his full might, pondered how the light of the trees, the glory of the blessed realm, might be preserved imperishable. Then he began a long and secret labor, and he summoned all his lore and his power and his subtle skill, and at the end of all he made the Silmarils. As three great jewels they were in form, but not until the sun passes and the moon falls shall it be known of what substance they were made. Like the crystal of diamonds it appeared, and yet was more strong than adamant, so that no violence could mark it or break it within the kingdom of Varda. And the inner fire of the Silmarils Feanor made of the blended light of the trees of Valinor, which lives in them yet, though the trees have long withered and shine no more. Therefore, even in the darkness of the deepest treasury, the Silmarils of their own radiance shone like the stars of Varda. And yet, as they were indeed living things, they rejoiced in light, and received it and gave it back in hues more marvelous than before. All who dwelt in Aman were filled with wonder and delight at the work of Feanor. And Varda hallowed the Silmarils, so that thereafter no mortal flesh, nor hands unclean, nor anything of evil will might touch them, but it was scorched and withered. And Maedhros foretold that the fates of Varda, earth, sea, and air, lay locked within them. The heart of Feanor was fast bound to these things that he himself had made. Okay, some takeaways from this quote as we go through this video. 1, the fact that no hands unclean can touch the Silmaril lest they wither and scorch. Note that Maedhros has a foretelling. He says that the fates of Varda, earth, sea, and air, are locked within these Silmarils. Very important. And also note that they are living things. It's not just a light source. There is life within these gems. I just thought it was an interesting point that the only two beings to actually wear all three gems, they wear them as crowns, are Feanor himself, he had it across his brow, and Morgoth. Once Morgoth steals all three of them, he puts them into a crown. One thing Morgoth can't do, he can't hold them, because he's obviously... he's about as unclean as they get in terms of evil intent. And so he can't actually wield the gems in his hands. The crown is as much as to display them, it also protects him because he would be burned horribly, and in fact is marked when he attempts to pick them up. Now, the Silmarils have a part to play in a lot of different tales from Tolkien's mythology, some of which I've told in different videos. I'm not going to necessarily recount every tale in which the Silmaril is involved, but one of the highlights, obviously, I mentioned that Morgoth had stolen the Silmarils from Feanor. Feanor then makes an oath, and it's a costly oath. He and his sons, he has 7 sons, the sons of Feanor, they all get together and they make an oath that just goes horribly wrong for them. Now, at the time they make this oath, Morgoth has all 3 gems. And so perhaps they're thinking in their moment like, hey, when we say we're going to go kill anyone who's got these gems, we're talking about Morgoth. What could it hurt? But they make the oath very broad. And so I'm going to read you the oath because it really does affect the fates of so many characters in this legendarium. So here you go. The oath of the sons, Feanor and his sons. Be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Vala, Elda or Maya or aftercomer, men yet unborn upon Middle-earth, neither law nor love nor league of swords, dread nor danger, not doom itself, shall defend him from Feanor and Feanor's kin. Whoso hideth, or hoardeth, or in hand taketh, finding keepeth, or afar casteth a Silmaril, this swear we all. Death we will deal him ere day's ending. Woe unto world's end. Our word hear thou, Eru, All-Father. To the everlasting darkness doom us, if our deed faileth. On the holy mountain herein witness, and our vow remember, Manve and Varda. So, whoa! They just made a vow to Eru that they would kill anyone who took or hoarded or did anything, in any way interfered with the Silmarils. And they keep to this oath at the cost of a whole bunch of lives and a lot of pain. And we'll come back to that. Note the darkness doom us if our deed faileth. That line kind of comes up a little bit later when the sons of Feanor are debating how to go about getting the Silmarils back. So, one of the Silmarils gets stolen from Morgoth's crown by Beren and Luthien. There's a big tale. I've done a video on it. You can check that out. But they successfully steal one of the gems back from Morgoth. That gem eventually, via a whole bunch of roads, ends up with Yarandil, the mariner. And Yarandil is on a boat, Vingalot, that sails through the sky. And there is actually a poem in Lord of the Rings that Bilbo and Aragorn have crafted together. And Bilbo recounts this poem at Rivendell. And it's all about Yarandil. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but I'm going to read you specifically a section that is important for this conversation. A ship then new they built for him, of mithril and of elven glass. With shining prow, no shaven oar, nor sail she bore on silver mast. The Silmaril, as lantern light and banner bright with living flame, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came and wings immortal made for him, and laid on him undying doom, to sail the shoreless skies and come behind the sun and light of moon. So what we're seeing is that the Vala helped set Yarandil up in the sky, basically gave him a task that with this Silmaril to guide him as a beacon, he would patrol the skies, essentially. And he is the evening star, otherwise known as Venus. But the evening star is Yarandil. Yarandil is also Elrond's dad, right? So you can imagine this situation where I was picturing this, in The Hobbit, for instance, when Elrond is reading the map of the dwarves, and he's through it the light of the moon. The moon letters. And he's using the light of the moon to read this map. probably his dad is flying across the night sky. Not that fast, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, Venus is probably out there. So he's actually looking up to the heavens, and his father is up there. Kind of interesting that's all, like, he has a constant reminder of his father. Also, Elrond had a twin brother, Elros. Elros ends up becoming the first king of Numenor. And when the Valar have set up the island of Numenor for them, Elros uses the evening star to guide him to this new promised land. And so it's also interesting that here's Elros following his dad. His father is guiding him to Numenor. I think that's just really poetic, and I don't know, brings a smile to my face that these sons can look up into the sky and know that their father is up there every night. So that is the ultimate fate of one of the Silmarils, right? It's up in the sky, and every night you can see it as Venus. What about the other two, right? They were still in Morgoth's crown. He still had them. When Morgoth is finally defeated in the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age, the armies of the Valar take those gems back. And in fact, they are become in the possession of Eyanve, who is the herald of Manve. So he's not one of the Valar. He's a Maiar spirit, but he's a higher up, very important spirit that has come to kind of help lead the armies against Morgoth. War is over. He's got the Silmarils. At this point, there are only 2 of the 7 sons of Feanor still alive. There's Maedhros, the eldest son of Feanor, and Maglor. The other 5 have all died in what they call the kinslayings, various kinslayings. They were fighting the elves to get these Silmarils back, because obviously Morgoth didn't have that one Silmaril. Once it left his crown, it ended up passing through some elves. And so, hey, the oath commanded that the sons of Feanor, even though now Feanor had died, the sons carried on the oath. They felt bound by it. And so they end up attacking elves, killing elves, and dying in turn. So 5 of the sons have perished due to this oath. 2 are left, and they still feel bound to this oath. And so we come now to what ends up being the fate of these last 2 Silmarils, because they're wrapped up in these 2 sons, Maedhros and Maglor. I want to read you a passage here where first you're going to hear them debating whether or not they should go and try to steal these Silmarils now that the war is over and Morgoth has been defeated. Ultimately, they decide, yep, oath still binds us, let's do this. And then we see the after effects. So here we go. This is Maedhros and Maglor as we come in here talking about stealing the Silmarils. And Maedhros answered, "But how shall our voices reach to Iluvatar beyond the circles of the world? And by Iluvatar we swore in our madness, and called the everlasting darkness upon us, if we kept not our word. Who shall release us?" "If none can release us," said Maglor, "then indeed the everlasting darkness shall be our lot, whether we keep our oath or break it. But less evil shall we do in the breaking." All right, I'm going to jump in here just for a second to say that, so what's happened is Maedhros is saying, Iluvatar can't even hear us. If we maybe try to reason with him to let him out of our oath, he'll never hear us. We can't get out of it. The oath stands. And so Maglor then says, look, we're doomed either way, whether we pursue this oath or not. Why don't we take the less evil route and break the oath and just see what happens there? But as you'll see here, he eventually relents and goes with his brother. Yet he yielded at last to the will of Maedhros, and they took counsel together how they should lay hands on the Silmarils. And they disguised themselves, and came in the night to the camp of Eyanve, crept into the place where the Silmarils were guarded, and they slew the guards, and laid hands on the jewels. Then all the camp was raised against them, and they prepared to die, defending themselves until the last. But Eyanve would not permit the slaying of the sons of Feanor. And departing unfought, they fled far away. Each of them took to himself a Silmaril, for they said, Since one is lost to us, up in the sky, and but two remain, and we two alone of our brothers, so is it plain that fate would have us share the heirlooms of our father. But the jewel burned the hand of Maedhros in pain unbearable, and he perceived that it was as Eyanve had said, and that his right thereto had become void, and that the oath was vain. And being in anguish and despair, he cast himself into a gaping chasm filled with fire, and so ended. And the Silmaril that he bore was taken into the bosom of the earth. And it is told of Maglor that he could not endure the pain with which the Silmaril tormented him, and he cast it at last into the sea, and thereafter he wandered ever upon the shores, singing in pain and regret beside the waves. He came never back among the people of the elves, and thus it came to pass that the Silmarils found their long homes, one in the airs of heaven, one in the fires of the heart of the world, and one in the deep waters. So, wow. They go into Eyanve's camp, disguise themselves, kill Eyanve's followers, so of the army of the Valar, and they kill them, take the gems, realize, okay, now we're going to die. But Eyanve's like, nope, you know what? If you want them that badly, we're not going to kill you. Have at it. But just so you know, you're not going to be able to hold them because what you've done as a result of your oath has corrupted you, and you are now unworthy to hold these stones. Sure enough, when they try to hold them, Maedhros is in such pain and agony, and he realizes this was all in vain, and it's turned him into a terrible person, that he commits suicide. I believe he's the only elf to ever commit suicide. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's true. And he leaps into a volcano, essentially. So he's dead, or his body is gone, and he's not, because of his actions, he's not going to be able to come back from the halls of Maedhros. But Silmaril can't be destroyed. So it is hanging out somewhere in this, down in the tectonic plates of the earth. Maglor, same idea. This thing is burning and tormenting me. Now, he doesn't commit suicide, but he throws the stone into the sea. And then we hear that he basically he wanders the shores singing songs of regret, and he never comes back to the world of the elves. As far as we know, he's probably still alive, maybe at the time of the breaking of the world again, when Numenor falls in the Second Age. But who knows? We don't know his ultimate fate. But he was, I guess, the last of the sons of Feanor to survive. He lived the longest, was Maglor. Those stones still exist. So somewhere out there in the sea, there is a Silmaril. You would think, since he's journeying the shores, it doesn't sound like he was on a boat when he threw the stone. So he probably threw it from a shore, which means it wouldn't be that far offshore. And if it's got this, obviously it has its own light source. You'd think there'd be this giant beacon under the water goes ashore. You're like, oh, there it is. But it's lost to time. So we don't know that some guy didn't walk by and pick it up and put it on his mantelpiece. But in any case, Silmaril lost to the sea. The Silmaril lost into the fires of a volcano. And then there's a Silmaril in the air. Thus completing this foretelling of Maedhros. Remember when he says that the fates of the earth, sea, and air would be wrapped up in these jewels. There's a popular theory that perhaps the Silmaril that Maedhros jumped into a volcano with ended up becoming the Arkenstone that we know of from The Hobbit. When the dwarves go to Erebor, Lonely Mountain, and they find the Arkenstone, and it's now buried with Thorin. But that, I'm almost 100% certain, is not a Silmaril. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but there's one reason in particular. I'm going to read you a little short passage from The Hobbit. See if you can spot why this isn't a Silmaril, and then I'll mention it at the end. Okay, so this is Bilbo kind of laying eyes on the Arkenstone in the treasure room. Smaug's hanging around. At last he looked down upon it, and he caught his breath. The great jewel shone before his feet of its own inner light, and yet, cut and fashioned by the dwarves who had dug it from the heart of the mountain long ago, it took all light that fell upon it and changed it into 10,000 sparks of white radiance, shot with glints of the rainbow. All right, so the reason that this almost certainly can't be the Silmaril that Maedhros jumped into the mountain with is the line that says, cut and fashioned by the dwarves. Dwarves are not going to be able to cut a Silmaril. As we saw back in the first quote that I had, it says, and yet was more strong than adamant, so that no violence could mar it or break it within the kingdom of Varda. So you're not going to be cutting a Silmaril. So, sorry, the Arkenstone is its own thing. It is not connected to the Silmarils. So that is the fate of the Silmarils. One ends up in the sky, one ends up in the fires of a volcano, one ends up in the sea. But what about the legacy of the Silmarils? I'm going to read you a short passage from the Fellowship of the Ring. This is where Frodo is at the Mirror of Galadriel in Lothlorien, and he's with Galadriel. It's nighttime, and we see, as a reference to Yarendil and the Silmaril up in the sky. She lifted up her white arms and spread out her hands toward the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Yarendil, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring about her finger. It glittered like polished gold overlaid with silver light, and a white stone in it twinkled, as if the even star had come down to rest upon her hand. Frodo gazed at the ring with awe, for suddenly it seemed to him that he understood. Okay, so that quote impacts a couple of ways in which the legacy of the Silmarils impacts Lord of the Rings. One, a somewhat minor way, but kind of interesting. Notice how, of course, it talks about Yarendil, the evening star. But then it mentions, it's talking about the ring she's got, right? She's got one of the 3 elven rings. And that it looks like it carries the light of the even star. That's very important. That name might sound familiar to you because Arwen Undamiel is basically the elven term for even star. She is named for her grandfather. So she's Elrond's daughter, Yarendil's grandkid, and even star is what her grandfather is. So she looks up, she can see her grandfather going across the sky, and she is in fact has a name that harkens to that lineage. Now, also in the movies, this isn't from the book, but in Peter Jackson had that pendant she had. He called it the even star, and it symbolically was basically she gave her heart to Aragorn. She gave him the even star. But that is all related back to her grandfather Yarendil, who has a Silmaril and is sailing across the sky. So that's kind of, I like how that lineage comes through. By the way, Elrond and Elros, right? I mentioned the sons of Yarendil. El is the elven term for star. So both of them have the word star in their name as a reference back to the evening star, their dad. A little bit of Tolkien trivia there for you. All right, but here's the thing that came upon me. This was mind-blowing to me. Hopefully it is to you as well. And that passage sets it up perfectly. Galadriel's got Nenya, the white ring. Okay. You've got the 3 elven rings, right? They were crafted by Celebrimbor. Who's Celebrimbor? Well, he's the second greatest elven smith ever, behind his grandfather, Feanor. So he is a direct lineage to Feanor. So after crafting the 9 rings for mortal men and the 7 rings for the dwarves, he realizes suddenly, oh my gosh, Sauron is having us do these things for evil purposes. Celebrimbor, on his own accord, creates 3 elven rings. it's just really interesting that A, he makes 3 of them, and B, those rings, they are Vilya, Narya, and Nenya. Rings of fire, air, and water. Where did we last see the Silmarils? We saw the Silmarils up in the sky, in the air, in the fires of a mountain, and in the water. And so there's this direct connection. I would say Celebrimbor uses his grandfather's work as inspiration to create the elven rings of power. I guess I just never saw that before. I guess I should have, but I didn't. But in any case, I make the connection. There's 3 of them. There's the 3 elements that are definitely connected to the fate of the Silmarils. And so when Maedhros says that the fate of the world is tied into the Silmarils in that way, I think part of that lineage goes into the creation of the Rings of Power and how they are used in this War of the Rings to thwart Sauron. So yeah, even after the Silmarils are lost, that knowledge imparts itself down to Celebrimbor, who makes these rings. So that is the origin, the fate, and the legacy of the Silmarils. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've got a video topic you'd like, put it down in the comments. Be happy to do a video, a topic of your choosing. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a good one.